Hey everyone, what's going on? Welcome to Raging Bull. So today I'm actually um, doing a voiceover on my previously done session, and it was done in the evening, today in the evening, and right now it's over 12 a.m. So the real markets are closed right now. The OTC markets are open, so I'm not going to uh, do a live session today. I'm not going to trade live. I'm just going to do a voiceover on my previously done session. So right now we can see that I was uh, watching the market Euro GBP, and right now in the market we can see that the two candles of the buyers are really weak, and we can see that the second buyer's candle actually made a new low. Okay, they did a new low. So the buyers, this is indicating that buyers are really weak here. You can see the buyer's body are deteriorating, right? They're reducing. Okay, and so we have to take a chance for the down for the sellers, right? And it's also a down trend, so we should look for a chance for the sellers for a down option. And I actually went for the down option here. So I'm actually waiting for a seller's entry, and I found the entry, and then I placed a down option trade. I'm actually seeing if the buyers can come strongly or not. So you can see that this candle was indicating that the buyers are actually weak. That's why this candle made a new low, and this candle closed on the resistance of this candle. So the sellers must come from here. That's why I put my trade for down option. And actually in the end it became a green candle, and this resistance was turned into a support, right? It turned into a support, and so it was indicating that the buyers are actually strong here because they are making resistance support. They're converting the resistance into a support. So yeah, the buyers are strong, but you have to also understand that buyers are um, defining their positions in 20 sorry on in 30. Okay, they're defining their positions at 30. So we have to remember that, and that's what I was scared of, because they are defining their positions below. So I was looking for a good buyers entry that will make sure that the buyers will for sure make this candle a green candle. And I actually placed this. I think I did not place any trade here, and it became a red candle. We can see that this was a resistance and it became a support, and sellers actually struggling to break this uh, support right now. And then there was a gap up. I don't know which party did the gap up, but most probably it was done by sellers, because if the sellers were struggling to break the support, then they should gap up or gap down. Then they should place a gap here. But I'm not sure about this gap, which party did the gap, and buyers are coming. Okay, so we can see that there's no sellers rejection, right? The sellers are very weak here. They are not rejecting enough. That's why I placed this trade for call option. They were not rejecting enough. I mean, yes, it was closed at 40, but still I placed my trade for call option because there was no sellers entry. There was weak sellers entry from 40. So this candle should be a green candle, or at least a doji. We can see that the buyers are actually trying to make this a green candle, but the sellers are actually getting their strength back, and it became a doji. So it's showing us that the sellers are actually dominating in the market right now, because we actually clearly saw that the 40 level was a weak sellers point, and now the sellers are not letting the buyers go above 40. Okay, they are making dojis. Okay, so it just shows that the sellers are getting their strength back. So this was a support where my horizontal line is, but the main support actually is this point. This is where we know that um, okay, so this was a support, right? And sellers actually closed at the support, and if you saw the reaction, we actually knew that the sellers were strong, right? In From this logic, and we can see that at the support there was very weak buyers rejection, right? I mean, there's no buyers in this point. Okay, and then there was a gap up, so it was done obviously by the buyers, because buyers don't need the sellers don't need to gap here. Okay, the sellers don't need to do any gap here because they were strong. Where they closed their candle is a buyer's point, right? But there was no buyers. We saw that in the reaction. So this gap was done by buyers in order to make this candle a green candle. That's why I immediately placed my trade for call option, and my entry was placed a little bit late. And it became a green candle. So we actually saw that if you see this reaction, we can actually see that in from this point this point, this was a low, this was a support that was broken by sellers. Okay, this was a lower low, it was broken by sellers, and then yeah, it was a point, it was a level, and we can see that the buyers actually stopped there for some time. Okay, for a while, and immediately, and then suddenly we can see the boost, right? There was a boost. So there are buyers active in this area. Okay, in this horizontal line. We can see the sellers actually trying to take the candle at the gap level. You can see the gap in the previous left leg, right? There was a gap. The sellers did the gap here. It was a previously buyer's point, and then sellers made it a resistance, and then it broke this seller's point, this resistance, right? That's why I placed my trade for call option. But we have to remember that this candle was formed by a gap, right? The buyers actually cheat here. Okay, the buyers actually cheated at this candle, on this candle, and that's why it became a red candle, you know. Even after breaking this resistance, the sellers again came here. And if you remember that this was a buyer's point. I actually told you about it, that this was a buyer's point. On this candle, the buyers actually stopped on this level for a while, and then they boosted, right? There was a boost from this point. So and the sellers actually stopped in this point, so the sellers are active here. This is a level, so this candle can be a green candle. Okay, this is a support. That's why I didn't place my trade for call option, and we can see that the buyers are entering in this from this point, but eventually it was it turned into a it turned into a resistance, right? And that's why I think I placed for a put option trade. Yes, I placed my put option trade for that reason, because this support actually turned into a resistance. I lost this trade, and this is also a losing trade for me. And we can see the sellers are actually pushing the candle to this level. Okay, to this level, they're pushing the candle to this level. They're trying to stop the candle below this level, but the buyers eventually broke this point, and there was no sellers interference, I think. Yeah, so this candle is, I think, a sure green candle, but I did not place my trade here. I don't know why. Maybe I didn't think of that at that time, but I should have placed my trade here. It would be a sure trade. And we can see that the buyers actually was stopped by the sellers at this color changing level. Again, we can see that the buyers The sellers are actually fighting on this point, this support, right? You can see the reaction on this support. The sellers are trying to go below, but it was eventually stopped at the level. So this is like, this is a confusion area right now, because it closed at the level, which means it can become a green candle, because we can see the buyer's entry from below, and it can also become a red candle because it stopped at the level. We can see that both parties are trying their hard to make the candle green or red, and it became a green candle. But why was there a gap? If this support, if the buyers came from this support, right, if the buyers won at this level, then why should there be a gap, right? That's why I placed my trade for put option here, because I thought that this gap was surely done by sellers, but I actually don't know if it was a win or not. If you know the logic behind every trade, if you understand the market, if you can identify the levels, you can never blow your account. Okay, I mean, yes, you will lose a lot of trades, okay, you will, but you will understand why you're losing, okay, and that's what it matters. And we can see that there was a doji. So this at this point there should have been a red candle, right? But it was a doji, and that's why I placed my trade for call option here, because if the sellers uh, if the sellers are unable to make a candle here even after the gap up, then this must be a good support, right? That's why I placed my trade for call option, and uh, it was placed at the very below. You know, my entry was very good. It was a winning trade, but right now we cannot trade here, because the gap must be done by buyers. If the sellers broke this neckline of this M pattern, then they shouldn't have um, placed a gap here. So this maybe was done by buyers. I think I did not trade here anymore, and I changed my chart. Okay, so here you can see that there was an M pattern, and this was a lower high point, right? And you can see, okay, let me check. So you can see that in this horizontal line, or you can say the neckline of this M pattern, you can see that the sellers actually broke this neckline. Okay, in this candle we can see that the sellers actually broke this neckline or support, and then buyers did a gap up. Okay, the buyers actually did a gap up over the candle. Okay, they did the gap over the candle, and they made a green candle from this neckline. So that means that this is a very strong level. Okay, the buyers don't want sellers to break this level. Okay, so if the sellers come at this level in any way, I'm going to trade for call option. So this is how you have to identify the levels. If you know which levels are going to work, then uh, if you even don't know the logic, you can just, you know, place your entry from those levels. And I can see that right now the buyers are actually making candles without touching the support, but still they're defining their positions um, below. Okay, we can see the buyer's entry. Buyers are keeping the candle over this um, gap, right? Buyers kept the candle over this gap level. So I was waiting for the candle to come at this level. That's why I may have not placed any trade here. All right, so the candle actually, the sellers actually touched this level, and I'm ready to take a trade on the next candle. And we can see the we can clearly see the buyers entry, right? The buyers are actually not letting the sellers go down below, and we can see the strong buyers push, right? The sellers did not break this support, and we saw the entry from buyers. That's why I placed my trade for call option, and uh, it was placed, you know, very late. But but this should have been a green candle, and it became a red candle. And we now know that the sellers are strong here because they are literally making a red candle from a support, right, from a strong level. So they literally shift turned this support or this neckline into a resistance, right? So that means the sellers are very strong here. We can obviously trade for down option, and that's why I placed my trade here. But again, my my entry is very bad, but eventually it was a winning trade. So if you have ideas about, you know, identifying levels, then you can sometimes know that which party is strong and which party is weak. And I again placed my trade for down option here. I wanted to place the trade at this point, but it was placed below this support, and it was a loss. Now if this candle becomes a red candle, then we know that this support became turned into a resistance, right? So on the next candle we can definitely trade for put option. All right, now we can see that the sellers are actually making strong candles. Okay, we can see that the sellers are actually making strong candles. They literally just made two strong candles. Okay, so that is just indicating that the sellers are very strong here, and their target is now to break this lower low. Okay, that's why I actually placed a trade for down option here. And if you uh, remember, if you focused carefully on this candle, you could see that this candle was not pushed over this candle, sorry, over this level. Okay, the buyers couldn't, the buyers were not able to push this candle above this level, so it indicates that the sellers are very strong here. And in this candle you can see the entry of the sellers, okay, the strong entry, so it should be a red candle. And it became a red candle and it was a win for me. But right now you can just see that the sellers actually um, decreased their body, reduced their bodies, and they're weak right now. After making big this big of a candle, they're making very small bodies. It indicates that the sellers are getting weaker. That's why there's buyer's entry in this candle. And that candle eventually became a red candle. But again, you can see that the sellers were strong, right? The sellers made two strong bodies, and after making two strong candles, they are now making two strong weak candles. Okay, their bodies are deteriorating, right? Their bodies are reducing. Okay, so that just indicates that the sellers are weak. Okay, they're uh, getting weak and the buyers are now ready to enter. That's why I have placed a call option trade in here. And the buyers are actually coming after the sellers became weak, right? Because the sellers are weak, that's why the buyers are making these strong candles. So that also indicates that the buyers may start a new uptrend in here. And then there was a gap down. I don't know which party did the gap. Okay, so I actually changed my chart again. So this was a lower high and I placed my uh, yellow line on that lower high, and we can see that the sellers are actually, the buyers broke this lower high and sellers uh, mm, formed a pattern, dark cloud cover pattern. It shows that the sellers did a fake, the buyers did a fake breakout, right? And the sellers actually trying to start a momentum in this point, in this area, and we can see that the buyers are actually trying to go above this level and they are not able to do it. And right now on this candle they are trying it. Okay, they are above this level and the sellers are pushing the candle to take the candle below the level, and they were not able to do that, and that's why I placed my trade for call option here, I think. And it was a win. Okay, so they are now breaking the higher high point. we can see the seller's entry to take the candle under that point, this higher high, and they took the candle, they kept the candle under this lower high, but then why there was a gap up, so a gap down. The sellers shouldn't gap here. Okay, so the gap was, uh, I think it was done by buyers, right? But I still placed my trade for down option here because I thought the buyers, the sellers will again push the candle uh, to this level. They will again try to take the candle under this higher high point. That's why I placed a put option trade with a safety margin, and uh, I think it's a loss. It became a strong green candle. I put my horizontal line at the gap level. You can see that on the left leg there was a gap, and this gap was done by sellers, and they made a strong red candle. There was a momentum, right? There was a momentum from this exact point. Okay, so this is a seller's point, and the buyers will obviously fight on that point. They haven't touched the, they haven't touched that point, but the buyers are actually unable to break their previous highs. Okay, they couldn't break the previous high. That's why I did not place a trade for call option, I think. Okay, I changed my chart, and right now I am on Euro GBP, and in that chart you can see that sellers broke the 80 round number. Okay, and then the sellers were not able to make this 80. The sellers were not able to make a red candle from this 80 level. Okay, the buyers are actually making a green candle even after touching the 80 point. Okay, and 80 was a support, so the sellers should have turned this support into a resistance, but they are not able to do that. And we can see that after touching two times, after touching the 80 round number two times, they're still not able to make a red candle from 80. So that just shows that the sellers are weak here, and the buyers will obviously try to go above this 80 round number. Okay, and on 80 the sellers are weak. It also shows that. And at the last moment it closed at 80, and that's why I placed my trade for call option, because we already know that the sellers, even after breaking the 80 point, they are not able to make a red candle with touching the 80 point, right? They're not able to turn this support a resistance. That's why I placed my trade for call option, because I think that this 80 point will become a support right now. But we can see the sellers entry, right? The sellers are trying to enter, but they are very weak. And eventually this candle should have become a green candle, and right now it became a doji, and there was a gap down. So this gap down must be done by buyers, because from 80 there should have been a green candle, and the sellers stopped the buyers in 80, right? So the buyers did the gap, and they are now trying to make a green candle. They will try to make a green candle by cheating. Okay, and they made a green candle with a gap, and we can see that this is a first this was a first resistance, right? And it was broken right now. That's why I placed my trade for call option, and it should have become a green candle. Okay, I remember it was a red candle, it became a red candle, and it should have become a green candle. Maybe it became a red candle because the buyers are making gap here. Okay, if the buyers are really strong, then they shouldn't um, place gaps. Okay, if they're in fact strong, then they should have uh, not place gaps. Okay, they shouldn't have come with gap. Alright, now we can see that the sellers actually tried a lot to make a red candle from this 80 point, and they were not able to do that. And right now, after all this time, they are finally able to make this 80 point resistance, but they closed at the support point. Okay, this candle closed at the support point, so that's why I did not place my trade for put option. But we will see the fight on 80, because 80 was just 80 was made a alright, so 80 was 80 became a resistance just right now. So the buyers will fight here in this on this resistance, and they actually broke this point. But I was actually waiting for the buyer's entry right now, because we need the buyer's entry here, because the sellers are actually strong here. Okay, even after breaking the first resistance, the sellers again entered in the market. So I need the buyer's entry, which will tell me that this candle will become a green candle. Okay, and I saw no entries from the buyer's point, right? We can see the buyers are very weak, and on this support the buyers are pushing the candle above very weakly, right? They're very weak. That's why I thought that this on this candle the sellers will obviously break this horizontal line. Okay, this support, and eventually immediately after getting a seller's entry, I placed a put option trade, and it was broken. And this gap was done by buyers, because if the sellers broke this support after all this time, then they shouldn't have placed a gap here. So this gap was surely done by buyers, and yeah. Alright, so this was it, guys. I am closing the session right now. I'm closing the recording right now. Alright, see you in the next video.